These are laymen. 2 years ago, we had a church. Hear this? 2 years ago, we had a church planting summit in Nepal. I'm told it was the largest gathering of church planters in the history of the country. We had at the time about 1,200 church planters. We had a little over 1,100 of them there, 1,150. And the story here is when we had challenged them to plant another 30,000 churches, because Nepal is divided into 36,000 what they call wards. A ward is kind of like a district or a county or something. And there's only churches in 6,000 wards in Nepal, so they need another 30,000 churches to have one for every ward. So I challenged them to plant 30,000 more churches. At the end of the summit, the leader, the national director, Krishna is his name, got up, and here's what he said. They call me grandfather. He said, "Grandfather has asked us to plant 30,000 churches." He said, "We have decided not to accept that challenge." He said, "Instead, we want to plant 101,000 churches." And the way they got that number, there's about 3 villages. A village over there would be like a neighborhood here. There's about 3 villages for every ward. So 3 times 36 is, what is that? It's 108,000, 109,000 villages. There are only churches in about 8,000 villages. Thus, they have 101,000 villages that still have never had a church. Think about that. They're not rejecting Jesus. They don't know who he is. So they said, we've got to have a church in every village. Not every ward, every village in every ward. So the national leader got up and said, we must plant 101,000 churches. And when he did, the people jumped up, and here's what they did. They are singing and dancing that they get to go tell people about Jesus. I don't know if you noticed, but the men are on one side of the room and the ladies are on the other side of the room. And the men are facing the ladies and the ladies are facing the men. Basically, the words of the song was this. The men were saying to the ladies, you must go from village to village, from house to house, until all of our people have heard about Jesus. And the women were saying to the men, you must climb every mountain. Nepal is a Himalayan country. You must climb every mountain, go to every village, until every one of our people have heard about Jesus. That song went on for about 15 minutes. They sang, they danced, they were dancing all over the platform. They were just rejoicing. And I'm standing over on the side just watching it all. And I understand what's going on. For you see, they're all first-generation believers. None of their parents are believers. Or their parents or their parents. It'd be like if your children came home from school today and said, Mommy, I decided to become a Muslim. Or I decided to become a Hindu. You'd be horrified. That's what happened to their parents. They're horrified. They were kicked out of their homes, many of them beaten. Some of them had their husbands walk off and leave them stranded with children, disinherited. And yet they are rejoicing that they get to go tell others about Jesus. A couple of days earlier, I was talking to Krishna, the leader, and I said to him, are you pleased with all of these church planters that have come together? Because we didn't know how many would come. I said, are you pleased? And he got right in my face and he said, no, grandfather, I'm not pleased. How can I be pleased when 98% of my people do not know Jesus? How can I be pleased when 98% of my people are going to hell? By the way, as it stands right now today, about 97, 98% of your people are going to hell. He said, "No, grandfather, I am not pleased." And he walked away, got about 10 feet away, and he came back. And here's what he said. He said, "The only way all of my people will hear about Jesus," he said, "somebody has got to give their blood." And he said, "Grandfather, we are ready and we are willing to give our blood." 2 days later, when he made that announcement, they jumped up and they began singing and dancing. We were willing to give our blood to get Jesus to our people. But here's what I want you to see. Every one of those people you just saw singing and dancing, they were not Bible college graduates. They were not pastors. They were farmers, taxi drivers, businessmen and women, shop owners. They were lay people who had already started little village churches, saying, "We will go back and do even more." We can train our lay people to make disciples who make disciples. When we do that, they will gather together and they'll do this and this and this and this and this. And if we instruct them, they will do this, which is where the multiplication comes in. And as long as it's done under this and under this, it'll be done right. And the heresy will be kept out. If the oversight is there, the ones they're just extensions of your church. You're still leading the church. You're the one biblically qualified. It will work. And that's what I would like to, that's what we're hoping to see done in your country, Vietnam. We're trying right now to plant about 250 churches there. And that's our goal. And once we get that done, we're going to try to plant about 500 more, and then we'll try to plant 1,000, and we'll try to plant 2. It's going to take some time. But you know what? If we're going to invest in planting churches in Vietnam, there's what, 300,000 Vietnamese right here in this area. It does not make sense to me to go all the way to the other side of the world to reach Vietnamese if we're not going to do the same thing right here. In Chicago and wherever you find clusters of Vietnamese people. But the greatest cluster is right here in Southern California. Maybe your area, you have a lot of Vietnamese in the Bay Area also, but Sacramento up there. And so, how are we going to do it? Let's make disciples who make disciples. Let's train our lay people. When we get back, I'm going to give you some material, and I'm going to have Ernie share a little bit. He has started a training center in his church. See, I'm hoping the result of today for me is not that you get some credit hours. I know you got to get that. But I'm hoping somebody says, I'm going to open up a training center in my church, and I'm going to start making disciples who make disciples. So we'll talk about what I've been doing so far this morning is sharing the philosophy of this stuff, kind of the why. When we get back after lunch, I'm going to tell you the how. How do you actually open up training centers, okay?
Thank you. Let's pray.